Hey, Matt.
Hey, Ty.
So here we are on House Calls the podcast, and I feel like maybe you've forgotten that we're doing the reading challenge.
I have not forgotten that.
You've been reading? Okay.
I have.
I finished a book last night that was recommended by Jen Klepper called Hail Mary by
All right.
Andy Weir, I think his name is.
Okay.
I recommend it. Very good book, but the main character reminded me of us.
Okay.
So he wakes up on a spaceship with amnesia. So he's on a spaceship, has no idea how he got there.
Yep.
And basically figures out that he's on a mission to save Earth.
Totally us. Yep.
So it took him a while to figure out what his mission was.
Okay.
So we're trying to figure out our mission,
Oh, yeah.
and I think I've come up with it.
Preach
Different
on.
styles, but we are cheerleaders.
Yes, we are.
We are cheering on our guests, but more importantly, we are hoping our guests inspire our audience, right?
Correct.
So then you ask, well, what experience do you have with cheerleaders?
Hey.
So I do have a story that was more orthopedic related than what you were thinking.
Sorry.
So when I moved back to Baltimore and started working in northern Anne Arundel County, I was seeing all these cheerleaders with injuries, broken wrists, sprains, strains, that kind of stuff. And I had no idea what cheerleading was because growing up in Baltimore, the only cheerleaders I saw were the rah-rah on the sideline of the high school basketball game or the high school football game. Did not appear to be something that people would get hurt at.
Okay.
And I had no idea about competitive cheerleading where people are, doing the stunts and throwing people up and things like that. And luckily my physician assistant, who was a dancer, a cheerleader. She was eventually a cheerleader coach. She was a cheerleader for the Blast. And the other side of her, she was an all-metro softball player, was familiar with cheerleading.
And a good dancer. She's a good dancer the whole way through.
And I was like, what in the world is going on with all these cheerleaders getting hurt just on the sideline of a basketball game? And she was like, no, and explained to me the whole world of competitive cheerleading, which gets me to another point. In sports medicine, it is good if the doctor has an athletic background. They don't have to have played your sport, but it's good if they understand sports. And there is something where you could see a med student kind of going into it because the surgeries are cool, but not really be familiar with the sports. And you do get some questions, like understanding that your senior year of high school is super important compared to your 12-year-old year. And when a mom's trying to tell you that their 10-year-old, this is the most important game ever, maybe you have a certain understanding that it's not, things like that. I do think it's helpful to be familiar with sports.
Okay.
So what are you excited to hear about tonight?
Not that opening. The cheerleader part I thought was kind of fascinating. I liked every bit of it, but I think our cheerleading skills are different than a lot of others. Again, we are pro bullying in the nicest way possible. And I think it works. Our guests tonight both have the same last name, which I find very funny. And I'm also excited because we've got another, we'll call it an Easter egg hidden in there from Frankie the Jokeman Waldron coming up.
I love it.
Very, very topical with this time of year. So no, I'm excited to get started. Excited to hear about Smith and Smith talk about rec sports and, how sports are a big part of our lives.
Club sports, multisport athletes, all that kind of stuff.
All that kind of stuff.
Now, what I really liked was that Frankie's joke last time was about steak. And you and I were kind of talking about a little about wellness and nutrition. Is this joke going to mention sports? Cheerleading? Jen Klepper's favorite book recommendation? Anything like that?
No, I can obviously tell you that it will not, but it's more about this season. How about that?
Ooh, I like that.
It's a spooky one.
Ooh. Oh. Am I going to get scared?
You might.
I'll find out. Okay.
Welcome, everybody, to House Calls the podcast. Very exciting tonight, Ty. We've got two guys with a last name Smith. What are the odds? And do you guys know each other, by the way?
We've met once or twice,
okay.
I think. A couple years ago. We may have gone to college together. I'm not sure. He was a freshman. I was a senior, so I'm not sure.
I was talking about the other guy with the last name Smith. But
okay. No, we did not go to college together.
Yeah. I was just just spent the Parents' Weekend in Lexington, Virginia, not at VMI, but at WNL. And a lot of talk about you, Peter, not so much about Ty. But anyhow, we've got Peter and his eldest son, Brandon Smith, to talk to us today about rec sports, club sports, sports in general, sports in our society. And Ty has a question.
So, what I'm trying to do with this conversation is, and I know it's a lot of different topics, but I would like to discuss multi-sport athletes. And I'm not talking about Bo Jackson, like a guy who could just show up and play anything. I'm talking about regular guys, like high school athletes who play multiple sports. And I want to talk about the benefits, the drawbacks, because certainly there are some benefits of specialization. There's some drawbacks of specialization. There's benefits to multiple sports. And that gets into the kind of the club sports versus rec sports and maybe some of the sports you do just for fun. And then I think that actually leads us into some of the D1 versus D2, D3 conversation. So to start off, I want to start with just sports specialization versus multiple sports. And you guys are two different generations, but you both played three sports in high school. So I want to know a little bit about what your thoughts are about that process.
And before we go too much further, I won't be able to say much because Ty will definitely be quarterbacking this and throwing this whole thing around. But I would like to say, in case I don't get it in later, I very much enjoyed having you both on the show. I appreciate your time. You guys are great, and I'd love to have you back. I don't know why Peter, with his fake guitar in the background, looks like he's a dad of a garage band that jams out on the weekends, and his son Brandon looks like he's a prisoner of war somewhere. But besides that, I think we're going to have a great episode. So good night, everybody.
Matt, before we let Peter jump in and then Brandon jump in, I did see something that one of the problems with society now is everybody's doing a podcast instead of having a garage band. So there's not as much music as there used to be, because we should all be a garage band right here.
Absolutely. Peter's ready. He's ready. When he learns to play the guitar and learns how to take it off the wall, he is ready to go.
Yeah, well, let's see how this goes first, because our musical ability, at least the Smiths you've got here, is pretty low. So you may be recruiting other Smiths for your garage band.
So Brandon, what sports did you play in high school, and when did you graduate high school, so we can kind of give a little bit of a framework? How old are you?
Yeah, all right, jumping right into it. So I'm 31. So I graduated in 2012 from high school. I played football, I wrestled, and played lacrosse in high school, and then went on to play lacrosse in college.
Got it. And then Peter, you graduated when?
I graduated in 1984, and same sort of schedule: football, wrestling, lacrosse, and then went on to play lacrosse in college.
And then even to go back a little bit further, did you guys ever play four sports? You guys ever play baseball or basketball, part of a rec team or school team?
I mean, for me, never in the same season, but as a kid, sure, I played baseball, I played basketball. I'm not sure if I ever played soccer, and those are sort of the options. You sort of 2 fall options, 2 winter options, 2 spring options, and yeah, until middle school, I probably tried my hand at all of them.
All right,
about Brandon.
And it was kind of a different age. I mean, Peter, would you say most of the athletes your age played 3 sports?
It's funny, in preparation for this, I was thinking about that, because my assumption was yes. As my visceral reaction, my recollection was that, yeah, everybody played 3 sports. But as I went through my high school class, I started trying to count the number of people who actually played 3 sports, and it was more limited than I thought. There were a handful. I think certainly more so than Brandon's time, and again, I think certainly more so in terms of just what we'll call average athletes who were doing it. But there were a handful of them. I didn't even have that big of a class, but that's probably wise, because there weren't that many kids in the school, and so you had more opportunities that way.
Hey Brandon, what about you? A lot of peak guys, and you both went to all boys schools, but a lot of guys in your class, 3 sport athletes?
No, not really not many. Even if you put in there like kind of the cross country, indoor track, outdoor track, which you can have arguments around whether or not that counts as the 3 sport.
God, now we're gonna get.
I'm gonna throw that out there.
All the cross country runners, Molly Waldron.
There's no hate. It's just not 3 different sports.
That's however you want to argue it. No, but there still weren't many that did that. There was a good bit of football and track and field. athletes as well, and those track and field athletes were also, highly competitive. So, but not a ton of multi-sport athletes, honestly, within my class.
I know a lot of schools have a requirement that you have to do a after school activity. It doesn't necessarily mean sports. It can be a club, stage crew, whatever it is. Did your schools have that as well? So were people always active in the school?
Yeah, it had to be 11 of the seasons, so 4 years, three sports, and you could take one season off your senior year, and that was it.
Got it.
Otherwise, you're doing intramurals or varsity sports.
Right.
Yeah.
One comment I would make about the difference between Brandon's experience and mine was that the other three sport athletes in his class, one of them played in the NFL and the other one was national captain of the national championship lacrosse team. So these guys were elite athletes, and I think that's a big difference between now and now is still 10 years, no more than that, 14 years ago. So
Brandon, does your dad always do that to you? Make you feel bad about yourself like that? I mean, I thought that. I'm sorry about that, Brandon. You guys want to,
so yeah.
maybe Aunt Katie can help you, go through deal with that. Jesus, did you see that, Ty?
Did, but
Most of them were
I think
successful,
that's a
except
valid point. And for some people who might not be familiar with what we're talking about, I really think the rate limiting factor to playing three sports in high school is usually the winter sports. And the reason is only 12 guys make a basketball team. So, and only 7, maybe 8 are going to get much time. So there's a lot of people who play maybe freshman basketball, JV basketball, and then quit. And then same thing with wrestling. There's only 12 guys who start in wrestling. So there's a lot of people who quit. And one of the things that I'm interested in is that a lot of the times people quit, they're athletic, but they want to concentrate on the main sport. So I think there's value that you can learn from maybe your lesser sports. So do you guys have anything in your mind, either in your history or somebody else's history, where like, I think I got a lot out of this sport that was my third sport, my sport that I think I would have quit maybe in this day and age?
funny, I don't think I had a sport that I considered my third sport throughout it. Ultimately ended up playing lacrosse in college, but really that was more opportunity there than, they weren't looking for a 5'10" guard playing college football. Like the opportunities weren't quite there, but I wouldn't put it as
That's
like a
not
third sport.
entirely true. You did have one opportunity. You did have a football lacrosse opportunity that you chose to forego because of the lift that you sort of, not lifting, weightlifting, but just the between the academic lift and the sports lift to try and play two sports in college seemed like a real stretch. And to Ty's point, that was a fall spring thing, not including the winter. So
And so Brandon, you might be a little bit different because you were kind of pretty good at all sports. Like you started on the football team, you obviously started on the wrestling team and placed high in what would be the equivalent of the league tournament, and you were a defensive midfielder with basically kind of different lingo, but starting defensive midfielder. So you're getting time at all of them. Whereas some people might be like this, the star of the football team, the star of the lacrosse team, but they're on the basketball team being the 12th guy on the bench. And I still think there's value to that. You can learn lessons from just being in that situation where it's hard to make the team or you're fighting for playing time. There's benefits to not just, if you're the superstar of where you're always handed a position and you're going to be highly recruited, there's also benefits to show that you can do the other side of it.
For sure. And it's also just kind of working to fight your way up. None of the sports are like, hey, you're the best here, but working your way up to say, I need to target this person or I need to find these skills, and then making time for that. Even in high school, I remember doing sprints in the morning to go to wrestling practice in the afternoon, right? You got to kind of make it all work because the sports start overlapping. So definitely had to kind of balance things in order to make three sports work in high school.
I think you just touched on it, right? It doesn't have to be exactly the sport that you learn, right? You don't have to learn that I want to get better doing a crossover dribble, but it's time management. It's being part of the community, being part of what makes high school so much fun. So yeah, there's a ton of things you can learn by not being a starter or being the starter, which I think is
well,
fascinating.
and I think it's also important where you go to school, because I will say, even for Brandon, in sort of the more modern time, where he went to school, they did encourage you to do as much as you could. I mean, like I said, there weren't a ton of 3-sport athletes, but they wanted multiple sport athletes. I mean, to the fact that, again, Brandon wasn't a star. So going into his junior year, he didn't play on the varsity lacrosse team as a sophomore. So he still had to make the varsity as a junior. For the wrestling season, he'd done well in states and got qualified for the national prep. So he was going to miss the most of the tryouts for lacrosse. And I went to the wrestling coach and said, listen, lacrosse is probably what he wants to play in college. So maybe it makes sense for him to miss going to the national preps, which was a neat thing because he'd earned that ability. And the coach said, don't worry about it. I'll talk to the lacrosse coach. And by the time he got done, the lacrosse coach didn't even have him try out. He made varsity on the weight of what he had done previously, but on the weight of the fact that the wrestling coach said, hey, this is important for our school to have multi-sport athletes. I don't know that all schools would have taken that perspective, and that was that worked to Brandon's advantage.
And the cool thing about that, and granted our following is now worldwide, we are in Maryland, and his school was A conference in all 3 sports. So other schools might be A conference in lacrosse, but be B conference or C conference in the other sports. It's a lot easier to maybe make those teams. It's pretty tough when they're all 3 A conference.
Yeah, I mean, all 3 of the teams Brandon played on were very highly ranked, nationally ranked.
So one of the things I think about, especially in our state, where I guess probably the most of the kids that we know that are playing college sports or lacrosse players, is I watch these videos, and I've seen one with Kirk Cousins, the quarterback of the Falcons, who's probably about to retire, and the other one was Greg Olson. And they're both talking about how the highlight of their football career. So this is like guys who've been to Pro Bowls. I think Greg Olson's been to a Super Bowl. The highlight of their football career was playing against their rival in high school. And I wonder about kids like giving up and specializing and never getting that chance. So say you specialize in lacrosse, never getting that chance to be on the football team in that rivalry game, or basketball. Like basketball gyms are crazy. They're packed in those little high school gyms. You're missing out on some of those opportunities. And sometimes your lacrosse career doesn't end up the way you wanted. So it's not just the lessons learned, but it's some of those like great memories that I would say, man, that kid, maybe he could have been the quarterback of his high school football team, but he stopped to just focus on one sport.
Well, I'll cut all that out because Ty, you're completely wrong.
Because why am I completely wrong?
Because doesn't every sport have an arch rival?
Well, I think
yes. The answer is yes.
But I think the idea is when you're playing in front of your friends, your family, your teachers, that can sometimes be different than a college sport where, first of all, sometimes the crowds aren't very big. Like not everybody's playing a revenue generating sport. And we'll get into that later, but there's a difference between playing football at the college level, D1 football or D1 basketball, and then pretty much every other sport. I'm not criticizing all those other sports, but sometimes your highlight is your high school. It's different. It's different playing with all your buddies you grew up with and those kind of things.
How about I split the difference here? As I think that there are memories you forego by not taking those other opportunities. If you're playing just one sport, there is a memory, there is an experience that you could get in the other sports that you're foregoing. And, at the end of the day, none of us are going to play professionally. So at the end of the day, we're learning life lessons and we're having these experiences. And so I think that's one benefit of playing in multiple sports.
Absolutely. But I think playing multiple sports, you're just building your toolkit, right? For a lot of different things, a lot of different areas. But I think they're there to be part of the team because they enjoy it, and I think there's more to it than just, hitting the winning shot in the big game or that memory. I think there's people that just love to be active and love to keep doing stuff and trying to get better at everything.
So I think what I see, and I'm coming at it from a different point of view, is I'm seeing parents in an orthopedic office with sports injuries. And I get that sometimes I think.
Wait, are you a doctor?
Gone over this, Matt.
Sorry.
Remember I was gone for 6 years?
Yep. Now it's coming back. My fault. That's on me. It's on me. Sorry.
So I get a lot of people who read these articles about how important three sport athletes are, and I'm going to play the other side of the coin. Is I love three sports, but sometimes when they're talking about developing the athlete by using three sports, I think sometimes they mean the option quarterback, the point guard, and the attackman. They don't necessarily mean the defensive lacrosse player who is playing offensive guard, that crossover. I mean, all sports help, but I'm not sure that they understand that there's more to it than just developing you for your main sport. There's the mentors you're seeing, the different experiences, the maybe being good at one sport, really having to work at that other sport, those kind of things. But there's also benefit to specialization. And Peter, you and I have talked about this before. There are people who they specialize, and that is going to get them to a higher level.
Oh, there's no doubt. I mean, I saw this with my youngest son, Adam, that he chose not to specialize in lacrosse. He was getting burned out by 8th, 9th grade, and he didn't stop playing lacrosse, but he dialed it back. And by 12th grade, the guys who had specialized, the guys who had given it all to that, had sort of passed him in certain skill sets, right? I mean, still as an athlete, he was still there. So, I mean, the specialization does help. Now, there are certain of those kids who went on and had All-American careers. Other of them burned out. So it kind of depends on the kid. So there is an advantage to specialization, and you do get better. I think there's no doubt about that.
And I think the specialization is just kind of a higher risk pathway, honestly, because it just leads to burnout. How likely are you to get to the end is lower if you specialize, but how likely are you to reach a higher level? Better, right? So the specialization is just this higher risk pathway to a potentially higher reward, and that's kind of what you're balancing there.
Which is interesting because I think people specialize in order to say, well, I'm going to reduce the risk. That it's sort of ironic and I think Brandon's right.
Well, a lot of times you specialize at such a young age, like you don't even know what your body's going to be like. You don't know what your rate of puberty is going to be like. Like there's a lot of factors there, and you might find that your sport that you specialized in was maybe not going to be your best sport, and you gave up another sport that you would have been good at. Or maybe the sport you specialized in, like that is your high school's dominant sport, and maybe everybody in your high school is incredible at that sport, whereas you also really liked another sport that wasn't quite as competitive and you would have had more opportunity.
Well, I think another fact of that is when you see these colleges, and it's obviously less now because they can't, but like the lacrosse guys that were assigning, kids, their sophomore year, right? That's they're
8th grade,
8th grade, stuff like that. I mean, They're 14, 15 years old. Their bodies aren't even, not even done growing, or they are done growing. And next thing you know, they're going off to these big schools because they have this commitment, and they don't even like lacrosse anymore because they've gotten beaten up so many times and they're burned out. And so it's a lot of pressure on these kids as well. If they specialize, don't specialize, just so they can get that, piece of paper that says, we want you as a sophomore.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because you talk about based on your current size. I mean, I've seen situations where kids got recruited on what the doctor said how tall they were going to be. Already a tall kid. Well, this kid's going to be 6'7". Look, he's athletic, but then by the time that kid gets to, junior, senior in high school, and he's not 6'7", he's 6'3", maybe that offer goes away. Maybe the whole thing changes. So it's, they have gotten better by not letting them go to the 8th grade.
Right.
Now they got to wait till junior year.
Brandon, does he always do this to you? I mean, does he always do this to you?
Jump in and, kind of.
No. He's like, we thought Brandon was going to be 6'7". That's what the doctors told us. And, we put him on the 3-on-3 basketball tournament, and he didn't, and he petered out. Anyhow,
I'm confident
he's got a kid now. So hopefully there's hope for her. I don't know.
I'm confident he never said I was going to be 6'7", so that's one. But no, we accepted. I think the speed is really where we're trying to, he's going to get faster, don't worry, and then just doesn't materialize.
And now a quick word from our sponsor. Hey, everybody. Hope you're enjoying House Calls, the podcast.
thought I'd take a quick second here to thank you for listening and make sure you're subscribing to wherever you get your podcast. And if you become a premium subscriber, you'll get more of the comedy from Frankie, the Jokeman Waldron. Frankie, take it away.
And
Why don't skeletons fight each other?
Why not?
They don't have the guts.
Classic Jokeman. And now back to the show.
I really want to talk about the difference between rec and club sports.
Okay.
And I feel like people my age will particularly talk about how much fun they had playing rec sports, and especially lacrosse, where you played rec and then you played for your school. And in the summer, you just played summer league. And it was very different than now, where people are playing club all around. And part of playing rec sports is that gave you the ability to play multiple sports. But as I thought about it, I'm like, there's no turning back the clock on club sports. And Brandon, when you were kind of at the dawn of where club sports started taking off, and I really like that model where the players who were pretty good in the 7th grade maybe started getting recruited to the clubs, and the other kids kept playing rec, and then you played for your high school team. Well, now some places have eliminated rec, and you're playing club sports in the 3rd or 4th grade before you really have any idea how good anybody is. And I think that's a big consideration.
Yeah, and it's tough because I felt like I kind of hit it definitely at a pretty optimal time, but also the sport that I would have looked at, lacrosse, we were in a very good. I was very blessed to be in Maryland where it was competitive at the rec level, right? Like people go to club because they want to compete at the highest level. They want to compete against the best, and they want to continue to develop. Whereas rec league, you could get enough exposure to go play in college, even playing rec and then high school. Whereas now it feels like the rec leagues have just been totally washed away to say it's club or nothing because we have to have this stratification so young, which I don't necessarily agree with, but that's kind of where it seems to be leading.
And then you're traveling all the way to Long Island, and the finals is Towsontown versus Lutherville.
Exactly.
In Long Island. Like, we could have done this like Saturday morning with donuts after the game.
Yeah. Although I had guys in college that they're from California and they're like, I've got my Northern California team. We're going to go play Nevada. So like being isolated in Maryland, where it's like you can have Towsontown versus Lutherville playing on Long Island. As the sport spread, there's just not the concentration of talent. And I feel like that's kind of pulled it more into the club era where club teams are coming in going, hey, we want to play some of the best teams. We just don't have them locally, right? So I feel like the spread of the sport has actually made it more likely to bring in club teams because it just has not enough density in one area.
Peter, do you think there's no turn about the clock on getting rec back?
Yes, I think you're right. I don't see the clock getting turned back. Now I think that maybe you can maybe manage it, and I think that's what you need to be doing if you're a parent. Obviously, if Brandon's on the other side, he's looking, he's a young parent saying, well, how am I going to want to do this? My daughter wants to play. I don't think you need to be doing it in 2nd, 3rd grade. I mean, I think that there have got to be options, at least where you can play, and you don't have to be on this treadmill in 2nd or 3rd grade. Because, I mean, to your point about you don't know in middle school, well, you sure as heck don't know in 2nd, 3rd grade. And if you're a good athlete, guess what? They'll find you. They'll find you when it's middle school, when it's high school. So I think, but in terms of going back to what it was, I don't see that happening.
Well, and unfortunately is nowadays, if you want to be a multi-sport athlete, then that means you might have to be playing for multiple clubs. And that's where you start seeing some of the overuse injuries. So unfortunately, like say your club lacrosse team is like, oh yeah, we encourage you to play football and we encourage you to play basketball. Well, they're still playing box. So, you have a basketball game Saturday morning, you're playing a box lacrosse game Saturday night, or you're playing football on Sunday, you're playing lacrosse on Sunday. And it's the same thing with soccer. So you are starting to get these overuse injuries. And unfortunately, all kids are not created equal. We develop at different rates. We have different resistance to injury. And just because one kid can power through playing 2 games every day and tournaments back-to-back days, not every kid can do that. And that's where you start getting the shin splints and the, different aches and pains that can be tough to go through. And parents sometimes look at you and they're like, why is he breaking down at 13? And you're like, have you seen his schedule? Like, it's insane. And they might say, well, but his teammates are fine. It's like, yeah, because he's at a different stage of puberty maybe than they are.
So Ty, rumor has it you're a doctor. Do you see more of those overuse injuries from people that specialize or that do multiple sports?
So it's interesting. The big fear at first was we're going to be people who specialize because it was kind of moving their body in the same position time after time, and it was changing sports, got their body all, in different maneuvers. So like if you're wearing out from soccer and you go to wrestling season, almost totally different muscles. But now what I'm seeing is injuries from people who are playing multiple sports. Unfortunately, they're playing multiple sports at once. So it's not like when Peter and I were younger, where it was like football season ended, you didn't play football again until next August. And then you went straight to wrestling season, and you might sneak in some stick work and your wrestling coach would yell at you. And then you went to lacrosse season, and then you played summer league while you were getting ready for football season. It's not like that anymore. So like if you're on a top level club lacrosse team, but you love soccer, you're probably playing rec soccer with still playing fall ball lacrosse, or maybe you're doing club of both. And that is a lot of
Right.
sport with not much of a break. And that's where it's tough. So it is hard because like what Peter said, the kids who are specializing or playing the club level are playing more games, they're getting more coaching, their skills are advancing. So their parents are going to be drawn to be like, oh, you should be on the best club team. Well, it's hard to be on the best club soccer team and the best club lacrosse team. Now, football, I believe, is still more rec to school, right? Is that true?
I think so. Yeah, I don't know that there's a club scene out there. There certainly wasn't when Brandon and Adam went through that. But I did want to make a comment as you talk about multiple club sports, because this is something that stuck with me from when I think it was with Brandon. There was a kid on his lacrosse team who, it was lacrosse season, and there was a tournament or whatever that he couldn't be at because he'd signed a contract with his club soccer team that said your soccer team has to take precedence over everything. And this kid ended up going and playing lacrosse in college. He didn't become a soccer player, but so that sort of stuff is not brand new. I mean, that was probably 2007, 2006, and they were making it was middle school. You know, they were making kids sign contracts that say, you know, we have to be number one, we have to be your priority. So, you know, it's.
And this is for both of you guys. I'll comment and then you guys comment on it. But there are some sports where it's really nice because the politics don't matter. And I can think of wrestling, like the coach might want you to be the backup, but if you beat the starter, you're the starter. And I imagine track and field, it's kind of hard to hold you back. Swimming, it's kind of hard to hold you back if your times are faster. Tennis, if you beat the starter. Golf, if your scores are better. Those sports are nice because there's no politicking. Whereas other sports, the coach might be mad that you missed tryouts or you missed a tournament because of your other sport.
A voluntary workout. You missed a voluntary workout.
Yes. Yeah. Brandon, did you ever feel that pressure?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, I think it more reflected on the coaches. Honestly, the best coaches that I had said, "Hey, go do if it's, if it's the off season for one sport, go do that other sport, come back." And they kind of understood that balance. I do think it's not a great sign when the coach is going, "You absolutely have to be here. I'm going to hold it against you." That was more of a signal about that coach than it was about an overall mentality. So that may have shifted, but that was definitely my experience. It was like, hey, anybody that was pressuring you because you didn't miss this thing, instead of judging it based on the performance, that was overall a general warning sign to go, well, maybe we need to look somewhere else. But I know it's not always that simple.
So, Brandon, this was a conversation we had with Charles Bodecki, who's the head of a school, and a lot of his coaches or teachers. Were a lot of your coaches teachers?
Most of them, yeah. Most of them were
So
teachers.
you and I went to the same school, a generation apart, and most of my coaches were teachers. And I think it is a little different if the wrestling coach, like your wrestling coach and your lacrosse coach, grew up together. They knew each other since they were 12. So it might be a different scenario than if you're at a school where they don't know each other at all and they both don't, they're not at the school, they're not involved, they just show up to practice. They might not care what the lacrosse coach says or what the football coach says.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm not, this is more a reflection on, I think there is a mindset shift, but I still think the best coaches are saying, I want to put the best person out there. And if they're looking at it from, well, did I see them at that voluntary workout, or how this kind of played? Did they prioritize me above them? I think that's kind of a reflection on the coaching. But it doesn't make it any easier for the players or the parents or anything like that if they still have to deal with that politicking to get into it. But
Especially if your priority is not one of those sports that where there is judgment involved. I mean, because it's easy as a coach to be like, well, my judgment was this person is just better for this reason, and it's they're the one who sees you. It's really difficult to call somebody out for that unless they're really egregious. So it makes it tough on the player.
How
Have
about
you
being
ever, hey Ty, hi, me again. Have you ever heard Peter Smith use so many big words? Me neither. He said like forgo, visceral, and something. He must have like Chat GPT like going or something.
It's the hearing aids, Matt. They're feeding me these big words, and you can't see them. So technology is pretty great.
Part of the reason why I wanted Peter here was because honestly, he played 3 sports, and that's pretty much the reason I played 3 sports, because I was like, well, I didn't really know what else to do with myself, because the person who was my role model played 3 sports. I didn't know what else to do. But I realize now that he constantly encourages doing multiple things. So like Brandon played 3 sports, Adam played hockey and lacrosse, but he played wrestling and football when he was younger. And Garrett can play guitar, drums, banjo, and sings. And like, he didn't have to learn the banjo. Like, there was no reason to learn the banjo. And I'm pretty sure his dad was like, well, you never know. There might be a band who needs a banjo player. Or maybe it's a bass. I don't know which one it is. But he's like, the more you spread yourself out, the more diverse you are, the more opportunities you'll have.
Because when I think of this, when I think of the Smith family, this branch of the Smith family, I think of diversity. I think of eyes wide open. I think of trying different things on a daily basis, just being, kumbaya, just bringing everything in. This really, it hits. They're all on brand.
I was going to say, I think the other thing is when you're not going to be a superstar in anything, you got to try as many things as possible to see what sticks. So that was always a motivation.
Sport athlete helped you as you age with like just kind of fitness, trying new things, those kind of things, where you're not so specialized that you play one sport, you burn out, and in a way you stop moving. Because I do think if you're playing a sport as a middle-aged man, then sometimes that's your motivation to work out. And if you just basically are so burned out of your one sport, sometimes then you become burned out of fitness in general, and that can be bad for your health.
Yeah.
And that's one to grow on.
All right, entering that phase. No, I feel like it's definitely something the people that burned out early in college say, and then weren't necessarily motivated to get back in. It's like, I'm done with athletics. I don't want to do this. Versus if you can kind of maintain that and, not burn out towards the end, it's like, all right, I still have a good relationship here, as opposed to having to refine that years later. It's hard to get back into it.
I think you're right, because I think about after college, I played club lacrosse for a couple years, and I got tired of it. I was done, but I wanted to do something different, right? Because I knew that there are other things out there, so I got into triathlon and got into a bunch of different things, only because I do enjoy the different sports. I enjoy the process of getting better at something. Starting out and getting better doesn't mean I'm going to be good, however you define good, but I can always get better, and that's fun, and that's carried on. I'd like to think it'll continue to carry on for the years ahead.
It's kind of like when you're rookie podcasters, but you're working with a team, because part of the thing about doing a podcast that's fun is it's enjoyable, but also we are trying to get better. And the last segment, I was like, oh, Adam did this, and Garrett did this, and Brandon did this. Sarah exists.
Thank you.
Matt's role was to jump in and say something about Sarah. He totally dropped the ball, and now it's like, okay, great. Now what do we do? And I'm like, Matt,
first off, I can edit Sarah back in. Sarah is the best skier of all of us. And
if we want to throw Sarah in there, she is the master of trying new things, because she's the one who's traveling around the world to different countries because there are new experiences. So she's taken it to a whole new level. We're just talking about what we can do in our community. So
I think the next conversation is somewhat related to this. And Peter, you're the only D1 athlete on this podcast since Brandon and I are D3 athletes, and I don't know what Matt is. So my point is, now I think it gets very funny, and I mentioned this at the beginning, where I do think this whole, oh, we played D1 or you played D1, and I think that might be part of the reason for the sports specialization is parents and kids don't want to risk their hope of playing D1, and I think maybe we're making too much out of that. But I do worry, don't give up everything for the dream of playing D1. There's great opportunities to play past high school, whether it's at the D3 level, the club level, or just generally playing sports for your whole lifetime, than to give up everything to focus on one sport.
I will say, when you're in that high school mindset and you're going, I want to be the best. I want to keep getting better, getting better, getting better. What is that? It's D1, right? To go say, hey, I'm just going to focus on D3. It's a tough thing as a 15, 16, 17-year-old to go, yeah, no. That's for the better people. Right. So I think that's kind of a tough mindset shift of like, how do you attack that?
What we really haven't touched on is the role of the parents. Like, hey, let's look at this eyes wide open and let's just make sure this is the right thing for you, child, that this really aligns with your interests and what you want to do long term. It's a lot of role of the parents, I believe, to make sure that.
and it's also, I mean, again, because we have the most sort of firsthand experience with lacrosse. The issue with lacrosse is once you get past probably the top 15, 20 teams in D1, the top teams in D3 are every bit as competitive. So if you're going to preclude a whole group of schools where you can play great lacrosse, which, oh, by the way, are great academic schools and put you on a great path for your future, because it doesn't say D1 in front of you, or in front of it. I mean, I think that's a mistake. And maybe to your point, Matt, that's really for the parents to get involved in. But I think the coaches, and I know from a coaching perspective, there are coaches out there who will motivate their kids by saying, well, you don't want to be a D3 player. You better work your butt off because you want D1. And that's the golden ring that you have to be striving for. And it's, so there's a lot to be said for the D3 experience. Obviously got a bias from Brandon's experience, but anyone who wants to write off D3 out of hand, I think is making a real mistake.
Absolutely.
So I always wonder about, and I think this is what Brandon said, is you're a young guy, and I'm saying it in hindsight, but like the thought of you could have maybe gone to a D3 school, maybe won a national championship or made the tournament every year, and maybe have been a starter for a couple of years versus you end up at a D1 school that never has a winning record and you never hit the field. Well, the deal is, when you're 18 years old, the coach doesn't say, hey, come to our team. We're going to be below 500 and you're never going to touch the field. The coach says, hey, we're building a program here. We're hoping to be in the playoffs by your sophomore year, and we think you have a chance to be a starter. And then it's more just the team doesn't develop and you don't develop. And it's hindsight to say, oh, that guy should have gone to this other school and had a bunch of fun and won a bunch of games, and that school's actually better academically. Like it's hindsight's 2020, and you're 18 when you make those decisions.
Yeah.
But I mean, I do think it's a tough decision because a lot of people who had that experience and went to a D1 school never played, say, I would never trade that experience. So I mean, it's hard to say what's your priority, what's important to you.
Matt, the great thing about golf is if you go play high school golf and you're never recruited D1, D3, you're probably still a pretty good golfer, and it's a lifelong sport. So if you go out on a work trip and you're playing golf and you played a little bit of golf in high school, you're probably going to be pretty good, and it helps you through your life. You can play it forever.
Yeah. And you're way ahead of the curve of the guys who are starting once they get out of college. So yeah, absolutely.
It's like when Peter goes on a business trip and he takes them mountain biking and paddleboarding, and they clearly aren't going to do business with him because they don't want to do that again. So what do you guys think about the importance of this other sports that you played growing up that aren't kind of like your high school sports? Like I would call them like more like the neighborhood sports or the family sports.
Family sports, so at the Thanksgiving football game.
Well, you knew we'd get there eventually, Matt, right? That was his segue. That's how he was going to get in there.
I signed a contract with Carlos Fernandez that I am not allowed to talk Thanksgiving football without him having complete approval of the script. It has to do with sponsors that we're trying to get this year.
I mean, like we've been saying about all sports.
Yes, I am the quarterback, Matt, of the Thanksgiving football game. We don't have to talk about me all the time. This is why we invited Peter and Brandon.
Doctor and a quarterback. What are the odds? And a podcaster, man. Oh man, you're a 3-sport athlete again.
Exactly.
God, I hope he's gonna spit it out. Spit it out. For you playing along at home.
Now we can retire from the podcast.
Yes, that was it.
Waiting 48 episodes to do that.
That was. I mean, I've done this countless times. I've had Ty spit things through his nose because I wait till he takes a sip, then I say something. And there, one time we were at a wedding, and this is when Ty was in med school. We hadn't seen each other in about a year and a half or something like that. And I walk into the room, he's taking a sip of a beer, and I just nailed it. And it came out his nose. It was the greatest. It was like reunited. Felt so good.
So these are the moments, Matt, that we were talking about earlier. It's those moments. You never know when they're going to come, but when they do, it's worth all the work and all the effort, right?
Absolutely. I'm so glad I turned down the Smartless guys to join Ty on his podcast. I've never gotten that, but you know, Ty, you were trying to talk about like family sports and neighborhood sports, and what I was trying to say is kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, is that it teaches you life skills and it teaches you know friendships and you know just building upon relationships that you already have, and I think that's the real takeaway from all these. You don't have to focus on one sport. Just be out there, meet new people, try new things. I think that's really what it's all about.
Well, I think about the sports that I've played and how many games I've played in different things. Basketball, which I didn't play at all in high school, I've probably played 5 times as many basketball games as I played all the other games combined, just because it became a lifelong sport. And it became a lifelong sport because it was something that was fun, it was social, and it was active, you know.
Yeah.
But
I feel like the number one thing that I hear from people, even at my age, is, wow, I wish I had played basketball some more. I played football in high school and that was fun, but it didn't have any carryover to later in life. Like you kind of forget how much time is left after you finish high school sports, right? And just the ability to go shoot a basketball, play golf, you know, hit a tennis ball, all of that. That's where you kind of go, oh, I've got a much longer life on this. And that's what I hear 90% of the time is like, that was fun and that was a cool period of my life. I wish I had more skills going forward though.
What are like with your careers, are there any like sports lessons? I think I put this in the email. Are there any sports lessons that you carry on in your career that maybe sometimes something that you do in your work or other aspects of your life that you're like, hey, I think I got this skill from this sport or this experience? Does that ever happen? And I can give you more backup to why that is I think I mentioned like when you're a surgeon, you're kind of coming up with a game plan, kind of like a coach would come up with a game plan, but then you have to execute the game plan. So there's plenty of times where I'm like, wow, I'm out there. This is kind of like a wrestling match where it's just you. The responsibility's on you. Like you're kind of used to some of those situations. You're used to working with a team. Like you depend on your teammates in lacrosse. If you don't slide or they don't slide, you know, it's these different lessons in leadership, different lessons in putting yourself out there, showing up, that kind of stuff that I feel like carries on to my work. I don't know if it carries on to your guys' work or not. I distinctly remember one time going into a med school test where being like nervous for a med school test and being like, this is nothing. Like, it's not like wrestling in front of a couple hundred people. And if you lose or you get pinned, you look bad. I'm like, if I don't do well in the test, nobody will know besides me and the instructor. And of course I crushed it, but it was that momentary like confidence booster I needed. Do you guys have any of those, Peter? You don't have any of those?
I'm gonna defer to Brandon because what Brandon has done for the last 10 years, I have to believe is a lot of sports lessons. So I'm going to go ahead and let Brandon talk about what it's like to be a to be an entrepreneur and to start a company and to go through the struggles involved in that process.
Yeah, and I don't know if you were the one that said it or who said it, but it was like that wrestling practice you went through, that's probably going to be one of the hardest things you have to do. And honestly, when it gets to 2, 3 a.m. and you're pushing on a big project, you go, I got this. I know that I can push my body beyond where I feel like I'm hitting a wall right now. You just know that you have that extra gear that you can keep going. Where I don't think if you didn't have that kind of sports experience and that controlled environment, you're like, it's gonna be okay. We're gonna make it through. You get later on, you go, I'm still in control, right? I don't care what's happening to me. I don't care what challenges are being thrown at you. You just have the confidence to go, we're gonna make it through. I can keep pushing and we're gonna get this done. So I think that kind of just the challenges from sports and going, I know that I can make it through that challenge has carried through a lot of
Well,
late nights.
and I think you can also have the experience of having suffered losses and realizing that they're not the end of the road, right? Because I mean, how many losses do you experience in your business career? And if you have no experience with how to get knocked down and get back up and keep putting a foot in front of the other, because sometimes that's all you can do is just keep putting one foot in front of the other. And if, as long as you keep doing that, you got a shot. You're still in it. So, I mean,
What a great grandfather you are. I mean, unbelievable wisdom that he's passes down. But Brandon, do you think, as your dad was saying, you are an entrepreneur and maybe in the back of your mind, you're like, I can do this because I've done hard things in the past, sports or balancing, college and being an athlete. I mean, that's a lot of stuff to carry. Do you think that helped motivate you to give you the confidence that you can do this?
Yeah, it definitely does. It goes, hey, I've done hard things in the past. I can do this next hard thing. And there's less of a concern of like, hey, I'm going to step out into the abyss, step into the unknown, and just going, hey, we can push through. It's going to be all right. And kind of that positivity of like, oh, yeah, I've gotten knocked down a bunch. I've gotten the crap beaten out of me many times. And you just kind of keep showing up. And I think in high school is 90% of the success is just showing up every day. So you kind of build that mentality, and that definitely helps you in the business world because you get beat up even more. It's just not physically. So
Oh,
yeah.
There is a physical element of it. And I have done that in my own mind before where I've been like, I was up all night in the emergency room and now I have to work all day, but it's not like I'm tired and a coach is going to make me do sprints at the end. Like it's different.
no,
Like all I got to do is
but
make it so I can go to bed in 8 hours. I don't have to do sprints. So there is that mental, physical hardship combination.
all right. Here's a gift from me to you, Tiger.
Okay.
When you all night in the emergency room, you have to work the next day. Which clip of Rocky do you watch in the morning to get you going?
Oh, I watched the 14th round.
There you go.
Of course.
There you go.
Now, Brandon, you're a dad, and Peter's a grandfather. Same kid.
What?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Peter doesn't dye that hair. That's gray hair. So she's getting older. So you probably are starting to think like rec league soccer, maybe tumbling, maybe
Getting
some
older. She's
gymnastics.
not. Is she 2?
she's 19 months. We got her in swim lessons.
They're aware of what
She's a champion swimmer.
Oh, first of all, Matt, we start him early in our family. First of all,
Yeah. Now look at you.
so she needs to be swimming in a couple months. But are you noticing what some of the 4 and 5-year-olds are doing? Are you paying attention?
We've got our scouting reports out. Yeah. There's a big kid.
How's she doing all those fast twitch muscles?
What,
The fast twitch muscles
what
are
are
working pretty good.
doing now?
Oh my God. I mean, are you upset? I mean, are you looking at NIL deals for her? I mean, what's happening? Where are you?
We're really hoping that
She's-
pushes
she's-
into the elementary school at this point. Start bringing in some of her.
She's learning to jump now, which is very impressive.
Again, that is not a Smith trait. But,
No, I want to know.
I got a slow
what
motion
do you
video.
think is gonna, without predicting for your kid, what do you think is gonna be kind of like for kids in the next 10 years? Is it gonna be like club sports in the second grade? Is it gonna be like more people being like, oh, we want to do, because I have read some stuff about like, let's make sure they do gymnastics or karate when they're really young so they know how to use their bodies, and then not really get them into the team sports until maybe 4th and 5th grade, not start.
or do you think sports are going to go away for kids, for a lot of kids? I mean, computers, AI, that kind of stuff. I mean, do you think, kids aren't going to be looking to go outside and be a part of a team and things like that?
No, I mean, actually, it's interesting because I do feel like there's actually a big push to go back to how do we recreate some of the stuff that we had when, like, I was growing up, but with the technology we have today. So no one has a house phone nowadays, but now they're saying just get a brick phone, you just text and call, put it on the first level of the house. It's now like the house phone. The kids can't take it in their bedroom, but they can take it to the movies. Like, how do we recreate some of that stuff that was good without going, hey, here's an iPad, here's a
Right.
iPhone when you're 10 years old, 7 years old, or whatever it is. So I do think there is a move back to say, how do we recapture some of that magic from what was good, but move it forward into the 21st century? So I do see that. It's interesting. I've seen a lot more flag football coming up, just kind of thinking about the shift in sports. So contact tackle football is definitely something that looks to be shifting later in life, potentially shifting more in towards not getting into that until middle school. Um, but yeah, the sports landscape shifting. I really hope we're not going away from sports, though. I don't plan on it, at least.
My question I'm going to ask each of you and Matt, Peter, Brandon, Matt, think about it, who's the greatest multi-sport athlete of all time? And if it's okay to say two if you can't come down to it, but who do you think is the greatest multi-sport athlete of all time? We'll start with Peter.
It's hard for me to go anywhere besides Bo Jackson. I mean, I think because what he did at his prime, and now he didn't go quite as long as because of the injuries, but there was a point when he was the best baseball player and the best football player maybe in the world at the same time. So I'm going to say Bo Jackson.
Brandon, who would you say?
Good question. I mean, it's tough. I kind of go to who is at the top of their sport and then also is competitive in another sport. So kind of having the specialization. So like a Michael Jordan jumps out and being able to go win 6 NBA championships and then go play professional baseball, like that kind of sticks out to me.
Mike McCormick.
It's good. He's
I know.
good in everything he plays.
I know.
Like it.
There you go.
I like it. There was a guy who, and I think we do need to mention Deion Sanders, because Deion Sanders was by far and above the best defensive back in probably football history, and then was a very solid baseball player. And whereas Bo was playing the entire baseball season, Deion was only playing part of the baseball season, I believe.
So I wonder, another one I was thinking of, and Matt, you're as the golf expert, Steph Curry. How good a golfer is Steph Curry? Because I've heard he's very good.
Yeah.
And obviously he's pretty special on the basketball court. That could be another
He's
one.
okay. Yeah. No, he's decent on the basketball court, but can swing the stick pretty well.
Did Secretariat play any other sports?
He did indoor horse racing and outdoor horse racing. So he was a multi-sport athlete.
That was great.
And good night.
Good night, everybody. All right, guys. Thanks very much for doing this.